Hi. Today I'm going to talk with His Honor the Mayor, Leisure World resident Joe Hunt, who has been mayor of Seal Beach since May of 1988. Is that right?
That's right, Pat.
Tell me, Joe, how long have you lived in Leisure World?
Since 1981.
1981?
Yeah.
You beat us. We got here in 1984. And did you live in this area before, Joe?
Yeah, in fact, I moved out here from Wisconsin in 1951, and wife, one daughter, headed west, kept going until we got to the ocean, and it was Seal Beach.
That's about the nicest place you could find,
yeah,
right?
And I've lived around here since then, Long Beach, Lakewood.
And what business were you in before retiring?
I retired, it's been 5 years, and I worked over at McDonnell Douglas in Long Beach.
Good. Were you interested in civic affairs before moving here into Leisure World?
No, not really, Pat. When I was younger, idealistic and was involved in local politics, a member of a party, knocked on doors, that kind of thing. So yeah, I've had an interest in government.
But you probably didn't have time when you were working to do what you can do now.
I noticed that as the children started growing up, kind of withdrew, and I think, it gets down to a matter of trying to make a living, priorities on where you put your time, yeah.
Well, that's true. With children, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
What about, when and how did you first get involved with the City Council here in Seal Beach?
Well, Oscar Brunell was the city councilman that preceded me. And about 2 years before I was elected, talked to Oscar, and he had an opening on the Planning Commission. So Oscar asked me if I was interested in serving on the Planning Commission, or if I was interested in applying. So I did not feel qualified, and I remember what Oscar said to me that, hey Joe, if you've got common sense, can make fair judgments, that's what we're really looking for. And I also think he was having a hard time finding someone else.
that always
so at any rate, I ended up on the Planning Commission, and when Oscar decided not to rerun for the council seat, I decided to run. And that was 2 years ago.
There are always pluses and minuses, I think, in any involvement in any governmental type thing. What are some of the pluses for you that you've found?
Well, Pat, I think that we all have the intuitive feel that you want to leave the world a better place, you want to raise your kids so that they're better off, those stereotype things. And I think we all kind of feel that thing, so that was part of the motivation for being involved. You want to do something. I was retired, and I think as you get older, you feel that responsibility even more.
Because you don't feel you've done enough, right?
Well, it's something that is built into human nature, I think. So that was a good part of it. And I think the other part of it was that after working at Douglas so long and in engineering, and it was typically a little, mind challenging, when you're just playing golf and not doing a heck of a lot with your life, you feel kind of guilty. Hey, I've got to do something. I've got to get back into it. So I think it was probably a combination of those two things.
Even if you were playing golf well, which I understand you do.
It's such a frustrating game. Maybe I thought politics would be less frustrating.
I have a friend who says that golf is the most humbling game in the world, and I think that's a fair assessment, right? And I guess you can't play for a week or two.
No, I stumbled and broke a small bone, and it'll be in a cast for probably 5 weeks or so.
Oh, don't let it affect your game. The other thing I wanted to ask you about the City Council, I don't think a lot of us, or enough of us, know enough about the City Council. How many members does it have?
There are 5 districts in the city of Seal Beach. And approximately, in each of those districts, approximately 5,500 people. So there is one councilman for each district, one council member for each 5,500 people in the community.
And how are the City Council people elected or chosen?
Okay, in Seal Beach, contrary to most cities in California, we are elected by district.
It's on the ballot, and we elect.
Yes, yeah.
Good. I wasn't really as aware of that as I should be, but we all vote for so many things, we're not really sure what we're voting for. And I understand you have how many meetings a month?
The scheduled meetings are on the first and third Monday of each month. And of course, there are special meetings, adjourned meetings, and so forth, in addition to that.
And the Planning Commission has separate meetings?
Yes, the Planning Commission meets on the first and third Wednesdays of each month.
I want to tell everybody, in case they don't know, both the City Council meetings and the Planning Commission meetings are televised live here on Comcast, and I find them fascinating. There's so much that we don't know unless we are really close to it. And when you watch, you really get a pretty good bird's eye view of what's going on. In fact, I detect a little bit of friction sometimes at those City Council meetings. How do you handle that?
I think on balance that we have less divisiveness in Seal Beach than is typical in most communities. The other thing about it is that we do not have an organized lineup of these three against these two, these four against the one. Rather, if you look at the votes over the years, and I think this is probably something that this council and preceding councils can be proud of, that we have different alliances. Edna Wilson, who is from Leisure World, and you would think we have more common interest, vote together sometimes, and we vote apart.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. And it's frequently I go over the minutes of the meetings to look at the votes of how we stacked up, and it's interesting. I think so.
The reason I find it very interesting is because in seeing people outside of Leisure World, Seal Beach residents outside of Leisure World, so often, not all, but so many seem to have the feeling that the residents inside Leisure World, maybe because we're older and live inside a protected compound, they don't feel that we have the true city interests at heart. That's the feeling I get. Am I right in that?
Well, I'm not sure that the sentiment is that we don't have the city interests at heart. The one I see more pronounced is that the public tends to feel that we in Leisure World are a block. And that's understandable, because every one of us that live here in Leisure World essentially have the same mortgage on our piece of property. We live in the same kind of a piece of property. We're in the same age bracket. We have so many common denominators that it's not unusual to expect that our positions might be the same. Whereas you go down to Old Town, and there can be the person that owns the 8 units, those people that are renting them, they're different ages, they work in different locales, come from different parts of the country, different attitudes. So I think that there would be more diversity there. We have more commonness here because, you know, we have more common denominators.
Well, that's very true.
And I think it gets misunderstood sometimes.
I think it does. You feel very badly about it because you hate to think, oh, I'm all square in my views, and when you don't think that you are, and you're trying to work the best for your city, too. Now, tell me about becoming mayor. How does that operate? Are you selected, are you voted for, or how does that work?
Traditionally, in Seal Beach, the council elects the mayor. And traditionally, it's kind of a take-your-turn situation. In looking at the records, it seems like the unwritten rule is that the person that has been on the council the longest and has not served. So it's just kind of an understanding.
I want to hear more about that, but right now, we'll be back in just a minute.
The farmer has always been the heart of American agriculture. He still is. But agriculture itself has changed. Over 22 million people are a part of our nation's agricultural system. It's an industry on the move, offering over 200 challenging and diverse careers. Agriculture's tomorrow is bright. Planning to become a part of that tomorrow begins today with high school agriculture and the FFA.
Boy, is it pouring now. I can't collect workers' comp because I did this at home. Man, what a pain. Cheer up!
You're covered by the California Disability Insurance Program.
That little part of your pay stub that says SDI.
It's meant for this kind of situation.
Ask your employer for details.
California Disability Insurance Program? That's great. Now, who's going to take care of the itch underneath my cast?
A reminder from your State Employment Development Department.
Joe, will you go through that once more with me, because I wasn't really listening as hard as I should when the mayor selection.
Okay. Yeah, each year there is a change in the organization of the City Council. And I think this occurs in about the middle of May. Well, the reason that it occurs that part of the year, Pat, is because the municipal elections are scheduled in March. So as the new council members come in, there is a reorganization of the council. So at that time, they select a mayor and a mayor pro tem. And typically, the person that gets selected as mayor is the one that has the most years on the council without having been mayor.
Good.
And typically, the mayor pro tem would be the one who has the second greatest number of years, and it's somewhat routine tradition that the mayor pro tem the following year would be elected the mayor.
So each year there's a new mayor.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to occur that way. That seems to be tradition.
I see. And now a question that might seem in some circles rather rude. Is there a salary attached to being mayor here in Seal Beach?
Oh, I'm glad you asked.
Good.
Oh, yes, there's a salary.
Oh, good. Well, in so many places there aren't in smaller cities, right? Good.
And this was done by a vote of the public. Can't remember when it was last changed, but it seems to me 10 or 15 years ago. And the council is paid, council members are paid $125 a month, but that is essentially for expense money. In addition to that, the council in Seal Beach constitutes the redevelopment agency, and they get $30 a month for attending the redevelopment agency meeting, which typically is scheduled in conjunction with the city council meeting. It precedes it.
Yeah,
so it's $155 a month.
That's a very big salary, right?
Yeah.
The thing that you know, when you go into all this, it's so incredible that we don't know all these things that the council does. You preside at the meetings, don't you?
Yes.
I noticed that because I watch, see? And what I would like to check into is the Mola project. I guess that's the biggest item on the agenda currently, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the property that we're talking about when we say Mola development is on Seal Beach Boulevard, between the police station and the back row of houses on the so-called hill. So going from that portion on Seal Beach Boulevard, a strip running all the way over to Pacific Coast Highway, on the other entrance of Seal Beach coming in from Long Beach.
Wow.
There are 225 acres in there that are owned by the Hellman family. And Mola, a couple of years ago, was able to get an option from the Hellman family for 147 acres of that property. So they then came up with a development plan and started the process through the city last year. I think it was in October or November of last year that the city did approve the specific plan. That's one step in the process. And after that was approved, Mola has to go through the hoops of the state agencies, Department of Fish and Game, Coastal Commission, for example.
Right.
In the process of going through the state Fish and Game protecting the public's interest with respect to wetland requirements, saltwater wetlands, told Mola that they would have to give up 20 acres of that 147-acre development, set it aside for the restoration of wetlands. So what Mola had to do then essentially was to compress their development to include that 120 acres. They previously had a golf course on the specific plan, so they took acreage away from that. I think it was 19 acres. And they took an acre away from so-called Gum Grove Park, did some other adjusting, moving around and so forth, and came back to the city with an amended specific plan. That has gone through the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Planning Commission, other agencies and projects that are advisory groups to the City Council. And on November the 7th, just not too long from now, the City Council will start their deliberations on that amended modal plan, along with all the recommendations that have been made by these other agencies and the public input.
It's a very big Simmets, I think they call it. It can get to be really a project, can it? I just wonder, how will this finally be settled? The City Council, they don't vote on it alone. When everything, presuming that everything is approved by all the different agencies, will this modal development just go right ahead, or does the City Council vote on it, or is there a public hearing, or what, to really make it happen?
All right. On November the 7th, essentially, our staff, okay, Director of Development Services and so forth, those people that have been involved, our staff people, our management, will make a staff presentation. Following the staff presentation, the public hearing will commence, and members of the public, and there is a great deal of interest, a great deal of concern, and even emotion on this path. They will be allowed to make their presentation, give their views, and we will continue that public hearing until every person has had an opportunity to speak his piece. We'll probably even interrupt the public hearing to have some City Council discussion, go back to the public hearing. The applicant, MOLA, will have an opportunity to make a final rebuttal and so forth. And then it will be processed by the Council. I mentioned the specific plan. There are a number of legal documents that are involved. The City Council will deal with each one of these probably on a voting basis. And there are sub-parts to each of these. For example, Gum Grove Park is an issue. How large, how many acres shall it be? What will be the configuration of the grove? We have some dying and decaying trees there. What shall be the legal and financial responsibility of MOLA? Another big issue is the fact that a state law says that where a development comes in, the developer must set aside a certain amount of his acreage to satisfy the recreational requirements. In this particular case, the formula says that in the MOLA development, that amounts to roughly 8 acres at appraised value of $230,000 an acre. He owes us $1,800,000. Now, we can either take that in some form of recreational benefits, or we can take it in cash, or a combination. So these kinds of decisions are subs of those 6 major items that I mentioned, and they'll all have to be gone through, and there's very strong feelings in the community on many of the subs.
What a tangled web we weave, right? I know there's a strong feeling about the golf course. Some people think it should be bigger. You know, that's a pretty selfish interest. But I know that many of the, maybe Old Town and College Park, those people don't want any more development, or some of them, because they don't want more traffic.
Sure.
And of course you can understand that feeling, and yet how about the city of Seal Beach? How will it profit from not having MOLA pass, or from having it pass? This is what fascinates me.
Okay, I want to comment on 2 things you said, and I'll get to the profit one second. Pat, municipal governments don't have power without limits. The Constitution of the United States, you know, in particular in this case, the 5th Amendment of the Bill of Rights. I can't quote it exactly, but it says that there shall be no taking of property for public use without due compensation. You know, that right, over 200 years old, applies in this case.
Of course it does.
And you can imagine all the derivation of law that occurs, you know, since that time. Okay, so all of those laws apply to us. So as far as saying no to MOLA or yes to MOLA, we have to make darn sure that we stay within our legal rights. Municipal governments don't have power, they have restrictions of power by state.
So
okay,
true.
yeah, okay.
Now, before you go on, we'll be right back in a minute. This is fascinating, Joe. We'll be right back.
Every day and every night, we make cable TV shine so very bright. We're good company. We like to fill your screen with every show you want to see. From us to you, our best is all we do. Comcast, watch us now. Comcast, we know how. Comcast, watch us now. The best company every day you're gonna see. Drama and adventure that take you back and make you laugh. We give you interviews, arts and news, it's gonna be play-by-play, ringside views, nothing but the best for you. Comcast, watch us now. Watch us now. We know how. We know how. Comcast, watch us now.
Go ahead, Joe. Tell me some more.
Oh, okay, yeah. And the other part of it, you know, we started out using the word profit. Maybe more appropriately, we could use the word give and take. If we give MOLA the right to develop in our community, we're going to take something from them. But we have to take it within the law. I mentioned a minute ago the $1,800,000 that state law, I think the name of the act is the Quimby Act. They allow us to get that $1,800,000 from them. Also, we get you know, money, income from taxes, etc., from MOLA. If we look at the $1,800,000, yes, we get that clean and clear. If we look at the other types of taxes that we will get from them, property taxes and so forth, Pat, that's pretty much of a wash. What it cost us to provide police services, okay? So that's kind of a wash. But there are two other things, two other revenue sources that I think are very important. Our school system.
Right.
There's going to be roughly 1 million square feet of construction if the project goes through. The school district, because of a recent state law, gets $1.50 cash up front for each foot of construction. We belong to the Los Alamitos Unified School District. It's a great school district.
I know, I teach there.
Oh, do you?
I
okay.
do, yeah.
Well, you know the money problems there.
Oh, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
so they would get $1.5 million up front, and boy, they desperately need it. There's also something known as tax increment, and this is a very confusing and often misunderstood subject. That property today has a certain value. After it's developed, it will have a much greater value, probably 50 times greater or 100 times greater than it is right now. And I'm just pulling that number out of the air, and it makes no difference. But because part of that property is on the so-called within the redevelopment agency boundaries, the City of Seal Beach gets all, or the City of Seal Beach Redevelopment Agency gets all of the tax difference between the value today and the value after development. Otherwise, municipalities only get about 1/6. Okay.
Yeah.
So the added income amounts to around $890,000 a year for the next many years, if the property is developed. And some of the things that have been done with that kind of redevelopment agency money previously, you know, the Greenbelt downtown? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And the nursery school, preschool that sits on the Zoder site, okay, we will use redevelopment agency money as it comes in each year to pay for those preschools. So now we have nursery care and so forth in the community. So it can do a lot of good. So yeah, there is some money involved, but primarily it will be for the redevelopment agency.
Yeah, well, this is the whole problem. I mean, you hear about it and we don't know. You don't know which side to take. Of course, I'm always on the school side, and I have to say the Los Alamitos School District is one of the best I've ever worked in. It's still small enough, there's real caring, and there's funds put to good use. So that I think you're in a very big decision-making year being mayor, as far as this MOLA project is concerned.
Yeah, I think it's an important one because, and this is only a guess on my part, that in the event that this development does not go through now, that simple logic tells you that 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years downstream, at some point in time, that the property will be developed in some form. And when we look at 773 units on 147 acres, it comes out to around a density of 5 units per acre. It's the lowest density that I'm aware of in Orange County in many years. So, you know, it's got to be a balance. Are we getting a good deal?
That's
so it's a tough one.
It's a tough one because a lot of your residents don't want anything else. They want their little beach community to stay a beach community. And I have to agree with you. I don't think it will keep on doing that. Not in this area and not with a number of people who are coming out here. So it's a tough one that everybody will have to make their own decision on, right?
Yeah, Hellman and Mola have got property rights. You know, going back to the Fifth Amendment. Sure, they've got rights.
No, Hellman, Mola just has an option on this.
That's my understanding, and I have never had this number absolutely verified, but I think that it's pretty darn close to correct. Mola has an option for somewhere around $140,000 to $150,000 an acre. I think that's a reasonable deduction that we can make. And we in the city have placed an appraisal on it of $235,000. Now the reason we did that was because we're entitled to 8 acres. 8 times 235 is much more. Okay.
I'm glad I know my math. So the Planning Commission is totally in on this with you people too for this on the Mola, aren't they?
The Planning Commission, when the project was processed across them, made some recommendations that were alterations of the current amended specific plan. And we will consider their recommendations as well as reviewing the approval that they gave to many aspects of it. But they're an advisory group, but we'll certainly very seriously consider everything they said.
It's so interesting we've been talking so long about Mola because it's a very big decision in our community. How about, are there other things happening that we should know about that we haven't paid enough attention to because of Mola?
I think, Mola has probably consumed most of my energy and thought. But I think that, we have to look downstream to the potential of the Bixby development. And as part of and somewhat divorced from the Mola, but still, again, part of it, is the overall traffic flow problems that we're going to be facing in the community. Now, I think you mentioned a minute ago that about something about traffic, and yes, the Mola project, we'll have to take a look at traffic, but we also have an ad hoc traffic committee in the city, and we are looking to them. And this relates to Measure F that was recently on the ballot, the sensible growth and traffic. Okay. As a result of that failure of that initiative, there was an ad hoc traffic committee organized, and their responsibility is to come up with some objectives that we hope to reach in Seal Beach. These are our traffic objectives. Hopefully, the city attorney will then convert these into an initiative.
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation because I've learned so much, and I hope that everybody else has. And it's been a pleasure talking with you, Joe, inside Leisure World.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it.
You really enjoyed it?
Yeah, it's a good time. I always